Everybody, welcome to today's Wealth Through Health podcast. I'm super excited to welcome the special guest, Emmanuel Anthony. Thanks for jumping on. And everyone who's watching at home, wherever you are, I'm just thrilled to introduce to you Emmanuel Anthony. I've known him for many years. He's a close friend of mine, and he is a certified Dr. John Dmrt coach, working with values, perceptions, working with people in relationships to expand their level of love, to balance out triggers and emotional disturbances within people's energetic field, as well as their body, helping them with their health and their wealth, with leadership. So we're going to go on a bit of a deep dive, a bit of a free flow, as we usually do. Have a lot of fun here. If you have any questions, please throw them into the chat as well. And just a quick little snapshot of who Emmanuel is. He's an inspirational speaker and researcher. He's a teacher and consultant. He does one-on-one and one-to-many, working with people in many groups and online for many, many years, I think for over a decade. He's helping people with mental illness, mental disorders. He helps people maximize human potential and increase their level of mastery in all the 7 areas of life, which we would love to go through today as well. So apart from that, he is hilarious. He's a down-to-earth human being, and he just has the biggest heart to help awaken as many people as possible. I'd love to start off with just a deep dive into your story, Emmanuel. How did you come to be doing what you do today? And then I'd love to talk about values and what this actually means for us at home. You're just muted. Hang on, let me unmute you. Here we go.
Beautiful. I believe I'm unmuted.
Yes.
I think my dad wishes he could mute me. There's obvious reasons why I became a speaker. According to him, I speak too much. But from a young age, when I came to Australia at 4 years old, one of my biggest challenges was communicating. I spoke fluent French, which is something I don't speak now. I understand French, but I spoke fluent French at the time and I couldn't communicate. And one of the first voids in my life, or the areas that I felt was missing, was just the ability to communicate and the ability to connect with other children. So I spoke well, but it wasn't the same. And as they found out through science, one of the senses isn't working as well or doesn't work, say sight or touch or etc., then usually one of our other senses ends up getting, exemplified, or it ends up going a little more than what the others were. So for me, I started copying what looked like, and at the time I was copying the people that were most popular, but now I could say that I was modeling the people that had success in the areas that I wanted to be successful in. I wanted to have that social circle. I wanted to be connected with all of those people. So I watched what they did with their hands and how they spoke, and I averaged out the people that were most popular, the 3 or 4, whether male or female, and what was it that they did. And then as I learned English, I learned how to copy their tones and do everything that they did to replicate that and see if I could have success. And that was really my first insight into human evolution and starting to have a look at human behavior. I didn't know it at the time, but that would take me on a very drastic journey that would then lead to a lot of major challenges with my father. My father was from a third world country. He's Mauritian, and growing up with him, a punch in the face was like a hello. So he and I had a lot of challenges growing up, and then I was bullied on top of that. And when we put all of these things together, I really felt like the world was against me. So fast forward to when I'm about, I think it's 22 or something along those lines. And I'm starting to learn about human evolution, development, and growth. I'm a sports model. I'm about 90 kilos at about 6% body fat. And I've gained a lot of mastery on the outside. And on my Facebook, people are seeing this guy's got, 4,000 something friends. They max you out at 5,000. So like, he knows a lot of people. He's always got pictures with beautiful women. His body seems to be doing well. He's working at nightclubs. So he's always got a lot of connections and doing cool things of his life. But on the inside, there was a lot that was going on in terms of my emotions, and I couldn't resolve them. And I was in and out of hospital, and I've almost died 8 times. And I just felt that I had to get a grip of this. So that was my biggest void. And I ended up attending a workshop with Dr. John Dmrt. And when I attended that workshop, well, in fact, the first time I heard him speak, I didn't even know a person could be that sophisticated and smart. He was talking about human evolution, development, growth, physiology, psychology, biology. I just remember thinking, can you talk about this many? How does a person even know this much? So I went out, attended his breakthrough experience, and in under 24 hours, dissolved every emotion around my father. That was the thing that was occupying the most time and space in my mind. And in a split second, when I was trying to go back through my whole history and find anything at all, I had 26 years worth of baggage from my father, and I couldn't find anything that I had I just had love and gratitude for every part of it. There was nothing but love. Everything that was anger had been turned over into love. I could see both sides. And in that moment, I realized that there was a divine perfection in the universe. I'd just been learning about energy and frequency and quantum entanglement and how that was the basis of life. And now I'd actually applied it, and I could see it and I could feel it internally inside of me. And where I used to have a lot of dis-ease, all of a sudden my body felt like enlightened. And I knew that was a pivotal point. And as I looked on stage, I saw John talking, and it was like the whole stage just went wide. And I realized in that moment, I was always meant to be here. This is what I meant to do with my life. Now I got home. This will kind of round up where I'm going with this. And as I sat in bed, many of you will probably relate to this. You could have this pivotal moment where you realize that life is about to change. You've realized a quantum truth. You understand that something's different in your life, but you're scared to take the next step because you're so used to the old you. You're used to who you're used to being and labeling and think that you are. You've got that compartmentalized into a box. So I'm in a dark room, and it's my bedroom at the time, living at my parents' house, kind of, legs crossed or whatever, almost in a yoga style position. And I'm just thinking, what are you going to do the rest of your life? Because I just realized that my mission was to talk to people and help them create profound changes within their lives and do what they love what they do, and solve problems in all areas. And as I'm sitting there, I go, yeah, but you're a graphic designer that loves to party and you're just known for what you're known for. So I imagined being a graphic designer for another 10, 20 years. And I just felt this disease in my body. And anybody, who's worked with me long enough knows that I refer to disease as a body not at ease and disorder as a body not being in order. And as I experienced that, I just spent a weekend learning about the truths of life and the magnificence of the human physiology. I knew that disease was due to me being unauthentic. It wasn't just some spontaneous symptom, but it was due to me being unauthentic. And I couldn't do it anymore. So I was like, I can't do that. And then I had this image of me at 100 years old. I don't know why I was 100, but I was 100 and I was on stage talking. And I had more energy in that vision than I never had in my whole life. And even now talking about that vision, I just get tears of gratitude. And in that moment, I made a decision. And in the words of my mentor, I wasn't going to let anyone or anything, including myself, get in the way of that inspired mission. And I'd rather die learning how to stand up and move on the direction to that than I would trying to live on my knees or, trying to do something that wasn't authentic to me. So that was over a decade ago. I committed to that. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but I said, I'm going to do a little bit every single day. And I'm going to treat this like sport because I'd grown up and I played sport. And I said, I know that in sport, when I first played basketball in grade 3, everyone has to be playing from prep, and they knew how to play, and I never touched a basketball. But I practiced 5 to 6 hours a day when everyone else was lucky if they were doing 1 hour every 3 days. And by 3 or 4 years later, I was the MVP every season I played. So I just said, I'm going to treat it like sport, and I'm going to outwork everybody, and I'm going to outstudy everybody. I'm going to do everything I can to make this a tangible reality because I'm in charge of my time. And if I use that wisely, then I'm going to be able to do something beautiful. And today, I'm blessed to be able to do this.
I love your story. I love your story. And for those who don't know, this has been a massive progression for yourself, and it's been inspiring to actually meet personally some of your clients who time and time again have literally life-changing results in such a short period of time. You helping me through some tough times as well, and what you've learned, and what you've learned really does work. And so gosh, we're gonna jump into a few different topics here, and there's a few questions that I have, but I'd love to know, how did you make that transition? So from going from where you were, in the nightclub scene, kind of, not clear on what you want to do, being fully immersed in your family life that, with your relationship with your dad wasn't very healthy. And so how did you make that decision and how did you make that decision, and what did you actually do to get out of that, I guess, tough time? And then keep you moving forward to where you are today?
Well, the transition was already in place, and what we run away from, we run into. And I had an addiction to peace, and I was tracking my dad to teach me to embrace both peace and war, because it's a fantasy to believe that we're going to have any one-sided delusion on planet Earth. In every spectrum, in all 7 areas: physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, vocation, and family, at all times, there is one universal truth. If you study quantum entanglement, you'll see that we have positive and negative ions. We have both spectrums that are always existent at this moment to equal degrees. And I was addicted to peace and wanting everybody to support me, running away from people challenging me. And that addiction was attracting challenges in all areas. So my father was representative of all of the areas that I wasn't willing to master. So he's only ever challenged me in the areas I wasn't involving in. And in fact, when I took the time to actually work and write down all of the areas that I was charged with my father, have a look at all the benefits I had, I realized addiction to him supporting me would have meant, because I was being challenged on the outside and being bullied, and also on the inside the family house. So if I had been supported on the inside, the way I'd been comparing my life to, depressed about, my father had done, never would have felt the desire to go out and do something magnificent with myself to prove that he was wrong and I could go out and do it. The proof was in the pudding. It was always inside of me. Giving myself permission to go do that. So if he had been the person that I thought he should have been, then I just would have stayed at home and I would have run away from everybody. I never would have been this inspired speaker to learn how to grow and evolve and teach people how to realize the magnificence of the universe and to manage their perceptions. So it was by doing the work to actually alter my perceptions, and altering perceptions alters human physiology, because that connects with the central nervous system, which connects with the autonomic nervous system, which regulates chemicals and hormones. So that was one of the fundamental parts. The other part was also just managing my linguistics and understanding that what I say or what you think or you feel, they're things that we can manage ourselves. There's so many things outside of us that we can't. I don't look at any of the items as toxic. I see it all as a magnificent journey. It's probably plenty of you right now that are watching, they're in specific parts of your life. And when I look at the nightclub part, I really had a good opportunity, and I do this on a regular basis. I just reflect back on my life and see what it was really about. Our voids create our values, and our actions that we take regularly are based on what's most valuable to us, what's most meaningful and inspiring. Well, growing up in a highly religious household, my dad was Catholic, wasn't good or bad, but that's what his parents did. It was very much forced down our throat. So suppressing sexuality, being able to even speak to a woman, it was, you went to primary school, high school, got married. It was like, it was all laid out for me. And I felt very trapped. So that in and of itself also, that was part of the journey to teach me how to stand up. So whatever you're going through right now in your life, know that it's not in the way, it's on the way. And if you have the tools and the resources inside of you and you were expressing them to your highest degree, that wouldn't be a challenge. You would have overcome it already. So if you're facing a challenge, that means that you're now being equipped with the tools and resources to manage and evolve and grow in another area of your life. And that's really what that was representative of to me. So I look at each one of those and I say, if that was to happen today, that would be taken care of within minutes. I know how to speak up for myself, communicate, have those things done, and move on to the next challenge. But during those periods of my life, I stayed within those challenges again and again, and attracted the same ones in different forms. I had to keep going through until I gained the level of mastery. To know that wherever you are now, you're in the right challenge for your level of growth based on the challenges that you're in. Now, if we have to go with what's the first thing, embrace and appreciate the fact that you're worthy of having the challenge. And there's nothing that you're going to experience in the mortal body that you can't love with your mortal soul. That's the truth. And anything you can't say thank you and I love you for becomes your baggage. But anything that you learn to say thank you and I love you and see both sides of, that becomes fuel for your fire. And if you look at the people that have done the most inspiring things, it's been the biggest challenges that they've experienced that have therefore become the journeys that have created a magnificent life for them. I'm yet to see a person, Nelson Mandela or anybody else, I could list a range of people that just insert somebody that's inspiring to you in the field that you love, including I'm a big golfer. If I look at Tiger Woods, it was the trials and tribulations of race and not being accepted, being told that he couldn't do it. They created a big enough vision inside of him to want to outwork anybody else. So if you're in a place right now where you're having extreme trials and tribulations, you're probably in a place of extreme growth that's just coming and occurring right now. And you're not seeing it, but in the future, we all know that with the opportunity to self-reflect later on, it's easier to say, oh, wow, that actually helped me in this area. But the true masters are the ones that are able to do it here and now and use that to the maximum quality and degree.
Yeah. I'd love to know more about that, because what you just shared with me is literally like a mindgasm. You know, anytime you talk, you connect so many dots together. It's amazing. Can you go deeper in on those 7 areas and how to actually master each of those 7 areas? Because values are so important, whether it's health, wealth, relationships. And so you've changed, shifting how you've shifted in such a short period of time using this method to really master those 7 areas. I see you do this better than anyone I know. And I looked at your schedule, your calendar, and you just fill it with all the things that your highest excitement of, what most inspire you, what most, what your highest values are. So can you break down how you've actually mastered those 7 areas? And is there a formula to it?
Yeah, and I'd say that I'm continually mastering. I always say that there is no final point of mastery. There's just levels of evolutionary mastery. The first one, and most people would be very comfortable in saying they've been there or they're currently there, is just the understanding of the self-worth that you have for yourself to give yourself permission and actually go out and do that. Because, at the lowest level of self-worth, I can't do that. I shouldn't do that. Not me. Other people, linguistically, if you analyze their language and the use of the language is very much driven towards the point of small me, bigger other people, instead of realizing that what you see in others is a reflection of what you have in you. There's nothing you can't see in them unless you have it in you. Aristotle spoke about this. It's the fundamental crux of the Dmrt Method. It's the basis of psychology and psychiatry, all the fundamentals there. But if I was to start off by saying, let's go with values first, because then I can build on that. Every human being on planet Earth has a unique set of values. Nobody's values are right or wrong. They're simply your values. Your values are not honor and integrity and things like that. Quite often that's a misconception. They're what you apply and do when you're living congruently within your values. So if I show you, you can go to www.drdemartini.com/values. That's where you can complete your values determination. But if you have a look at my values, my number one values is about 60%. When I've done that, I do it every single 4 weeks. I don't take guesses by inspired destiny. If you do your values once, moment in time, if you do it every 4 weeks, you get inspired destiny. That's why if somebody says, how do you know this is what you're meant to do? A decade of doing something every 4 weeks that analyzes my life and asks, what are you interested in? What do you think about, talk about, what you organize, discipline, reliable, and focus, just deconstruct your whole life. And it's showing the same answers coming up. There's a reason for that, because I don't believe that we just have spontaneity in this universe. I believe there's fundamental science and reason. But if you go and complete that values determination and you have a look at mine, which would be different from yours, you'll see that family's number one, human evolution, development, growth is number two, but really those two are so close to each other because I'm only doing, I'm creating a family with Renee and looking at our first child, but at the same time, I'm doing this for my children. I want to share everything that I've learned with them so they can learn how to master their perceptions, their emotions, and have wellness and well-being to the greatest degree. And this is how I can give that to them. Now, the third thing is physical health, wellness, and well-being, especially around playing golf and exercising, what I put into my body and mind. So if I look at those top three values, anytime that you speak to me or get me to do anything that's in alignment with my values, I'm organized, disciplined, reliable, and focused. I think about it, talk about it. I can do it all day. 5 hours feels like 5 minutes. Now, if you get me to do something that I don't like and don't appreciate, for example, cake decorating or something like that, I'm unorganized, undisciplined, unreliable, unfocused, procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate. And you'll notice that when I talk about human values, it's just, I won't shut up. It's really fast and it's coming out. That's because the body's neurologically programmed. Through neurology, we send messenger signals. And those messenger signals, there's actually a space between them. And as we send those signals, if we're thinking about something regularly over and over again, a myelinization process occurs. And that myelinization is actually to strengthen those signals. And that's why if I speak to you about something that you value, it's like a game show host. You're ready to just jump in and answer it because every part of you has that neurologically programmed where telos fulfilling or values fulfilling organisms and whatever it is that's highest in our values maximizes our potential. We also take pain and pleasure on whatever's highest in our values. Your highest values is, say, wellness and around health, but it's specifically around, say, the gym. You intentionally go in there to put your body through pain, but you're willing to lift a little bit heavier or eat a specific diet or etc. because that also gives you pleasure. Whereas somebody that doesn't have that as a value, they see it as extreme pain, boring, and I'm not going to do it. So myself, with human evolution, development, and growth, working with people on a daily basis and helping them work through their biggest trials and tribulations, whether it's 10 years of depression or anything, I get excited. I can't wait to do that. But if you speak to most of my friends with different values, it's boring, it's weird, and I'm completely different. So discovering what your values are is one of the first keys to unlocking human potential to the greatest degree. And not only that, whatever it is that's highest in your value goes into long-term memory. Whatever's lowest in your values goes into short-term memory. So I'm a genius in the areas that's highest in my values, and I'm an absolute idiot in the areas that's lowest in my values. The reason I set a calendar that is in alignment with what's most to least valuable to me is because that's how I get the greatest amount of energy and vitality to maximize my potential throughout the day, but also to be most fulfilled. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to have fulfillment, to feel full. And the greatest way to do that is to do what we love and love what we do. Now, when you're first starting off, some of you may be thinking, Emmanuel, I have a full-time job. I'm trying to do this part-time job on the side. I'm really inspired by it. I sell these products, etc. I go, great. I started off with 5 jobs and I just played a game. And I said, which one of these most fulfills me? Which one do I love the most? And it was this. And I said, okay, I'm going to play a game. I'm going to try and get that to make more money than the least paying job that I have. And when it does that for a couple of months and I can see sustainability and I've got a real plan that shows me how I'm going to do that, then I'm going to cut that job out. And then I'll have 4 jobs in this, then 3 jobs in this. And I'm just going to keep doing that until it's a realistic structure. But I've got to figure out how to make the finances to fulfill my lifestyle, my payments, my cars. I have a beautiful Mercedes that I was riding then of a hardtop convertible. I wasn't throwing that away because I wanted it all. And I don't think there's a reason why we shouldn't. So as I did that, my timetable started to fulfill more with the things that I love and less with the things that I didn't love and appreciate. But as I was doing that, I also realized something, and I call it a wealth maximizer calendar. It's just my perception of it. When somebody says I'm rich, it means I've got a lot of money. But when somebody says I'm wealthy, it's I have the mastery in all 7 areas of life. And that's a very different thing, because I work with a lot of business owners who have a lot of money, but their health and wellness is out the door. Their relationship is about to have a divorce. Their children aren't connected with them. They're mentally got a lot of diseases. The only thing that money's going to go to is some kind of cancer they'll be paying to try and, hang on to a thread to stay alive in the future. And we've got to bring balance to all these other areas. But in a decade of doing that with thousands of clients, they all say the same thing. I feel more fulfilled. I feel more energized. I feel more inspired. Of course, you work with the body instead of against the body. You get rewarded with energy and vitality. So the next key for anybody watching this is organize your time, because time allows you to get paid more and do more of what you love. So take your calendar, have a look at that throughout, full 7 days. You got 24 hours. That's just a system we run by. Different people run by different systems, believe it or not. But have a look at that and say, where am I going to put my sleep? What's optimal sleep for you? I've gone through 5 hours. I'm now doing 6.5 hours, but it just ranges throughout the year to what feels great for me. But place your sleep into there. Once you've done that, write the 7 areas onto a piece of paper on the left or right hand side of you, and then just put time blocks aside and say, where am I going to take care of my physical mastery and what inspires me in that area? If you love going for walks at Manly Beach in the morning, go and do that. If you're like Zach, and even in winter, you like to get your chest out, even if it's ridiculously cold, and go for a swim. I don't know how he did it in Manly, and that's what inspires you. Place that into your calendar. I actually think if you do that first thing in the morning, I'm with Zach as well, you increase your endorphins and you find that it just completely alters your perception for the rest of the day and you're ready to attack, especially if you've done that at 5 or 6 in the morning. But place that into there. Then look at career mastery, look at social mastery. Put space aside for each one of these and in the way that most inspires you. And if you do that, you're going to find that all of a sudden you start loving and appreciating life. And one of the keys that I said there was the way that most inspires you. Every time somebody puts social in there, they go, but I don't want to go to nightclubs or bars. Don't do that. I have no interest in that. I haven't drank for the last couple of years. I might have a glass of wine once like that. We're going to go to France. Renee and I are planning that when we're allowed to. I'll have a glass of wine at their wineries there. But I don't drink or do anything like that. I worked at nightclubs long enough. I've done enough drugs and alcohol to kill everybody watching this. So I've had my time doing that. So now I put the things in that I love. Instead of going to a bar, I'll go and have a coffee with a friend, talk about human evolution, development, and growth. I'll just pack my calendar with clients so I can help them work on their challenges and create inspiring lives. But if you do that and you use that strategy I said, where you knock off that part-time, then full-time job, then part-time, and you create a realistic strategy, that's going to increase the probability of you having longevity in doing what you love. And the only time I've seen that not really be a reality is when sometimes people just get annoyed, they hate their job, they quit, they jump into trying to have a career into something like, what you're selling, Healy or something like that. But they haven't realized that you're a business owner, you're the marketer, you're the salesperson, you're the person that handles any kind of complaints that anybody has. You're all of that, but you weren't prepared for it. And you know everything there is to know about Healy and you're inspired by it, but you haven't prepared for all that other stuff. And now you think you can't do it when the reality is you can, but maybe let's crawl, walk, then run, as compared to just trying to, run at the same pace as Usain Bolt, and then hoping that would happen. You can do it. Just set a more realistic expectation of yourself in time, space horizons that are much more realistic. Add a little bit of pressure, but don't try and come Donald Trump in 24 hours.
Oh my gosh, there's so much here to unpack. And I would just ask, what is the one book people can read to kind of understand this? Or can they go to your website? Or how does someone start? Obviously, that values determination, Dr. John Demartini, values determination. I've been using that for many years. It's a powerful process. It's a great check-in to see what our greatest supports and challenges are and how important it is to have both challenge and support. I think that's vital. And then those 7 areas and actually scheduling them into our calendar to make sure that we're feeling fulfilled every day and we're progressing. So I love that. But are there any books or resources apart from that you could recommend?
Yeah. So there's a few great books by Dr. John Demartini. By the way, if you ever think, Emmanuel recommends a lot of Dr. John Demartini's work. Beyond being a Dmrt Method facilitator, in the last decade, I've spent over $300,000 in human evolution, development, and growth. And I've seen a lot of the guys that are perceived to be at the top. Tony Robbins, I've studied NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, used to certify in those, worked with some of the world's top human behavioral specialists, as well as psychiatrists and psychologists. And these are people that I call on a regular basis to have conversations. And one of the things I can say is, as I went through that, I realized there's levels to the game. And at the lowest level, you have the most fundamental thinking and things that are selling you into ideas. They can have great marketing, but they're not realistic, and you'll pump yourself up. One of them is positive thinking, for example. Does not work, has never worked, will never work. And the reason being, if I take a relationship and I say Zach, for example, always positive, never negative, always nice, never mean, always looks great, never ugly. If I just gave him a one-sided perception, all I'd have to do is speak to any of his girlfriends, and they'd say to me, no, I've spent enough time with you to say that if you piss him off and go against his values, he'll be very mean to you. But if you align with his values and communicate to him nicely, then he'll open up to you. Then he has two sides, and really those two sides are just perfectly normal, and he's a regular human being. So as I went through, I realized that the lowest, most fundamental stages, you are looking for a one-sided parallel. And when you start to look for that which is unachievable and try and maintain that, the higher you go, the more you fall. So there are definitely layers to this. And I feel that John is one of the highest in that field. That's why I recommend that, if not the highest. So The Values Factor by Dr. John Demartini is an amazing book, not only because you have the ability to understand values in a profoundly different way, but also for the fact that it actually takes you through each of the individual 13 questions and how to answer them within the book. So that's a fantastic book. And in fact, any workshop that I run, I generally have got that in there, because I know that every single one of my clients and students that does exactly what Zach, has done and actually gone through and done it, they go, wow, not only is that powerful, but the more I do it, the more I get congruent about who I authentically am and what I'm here to do. And then I knuckle down and chuck out all the rest of the brain noise and just get zoned into a mission, not just living my life, but a mission. It's a very different lifestyle. So that's one of the books. Inspired Destiny as well is a fantastic one. It really goes through what you're here to do and the symptoms of the body and understanding those. If you ever felt like you're at work and you're procrastinating, hesitating, I remember working with a client and said, I procrastinate a lot of work. He did his values. And then I looked at what he was doing at work when he said he was procrastinating with all the stuff that he valued. And then I said, okay, let's find a job for you where you do all the things that you valued. So we did that. And he had 3 sessions with me. We did that in the first session. He did that for homework. And then we took a little bit of a break in between, and he actually had a job interview for that other job, got it, they loved him. And then before we went into our second session, he said, weirdest thing, I'm not procrastinating. It's not weird. You're doing what you love. He goes, now that they're giving me all the things that I love and I'm aligned with it, if anything, it's not procrastination. It's the opposite. I have to figure out how to switch off. So our next job was to teach him how to have a balance in all 7 areas. And that's what I mean by there's never one level of success. It's just one level of evolution. And the minute that he found what he loved and he felt that he was no longer procrastinating, it was okay, well, how do we create that balance in all 7 areas of life? How do we create that maintenance and longevity? Then how do we take that and maximize the potential of that to greater realms of growth? Instead of making 100,000, how do we go to 250,000? Instead of having a body that I just feel great in, how do I have something that looks amazing as well, but also I can learn about food? So there's always another level of mastery. But those are 2 profound books. If I was just to go into, keeping it simple here, that if you started on those 2, you would really create a profound amount of change. And obviously the third thing I'd suggest is get in contact with myself. I do 20-minute complimentary calls, and that way we can have a look at the specifics of where are you, what's going on, and what are the real results. That's to me the major thing I love talking about. Results. I found that in the industry that I am, in the psychological field, day in and day out, 70% of my audience coming in and saying, please don't ask me how I feel. I've been through 7 psychiatrists. I don't want this to be another me talking to you over and over again. So that would be the third approach, actually getting results in those areas.
I love that. So there's the values factor,
correct.
And then
Inspired Destiny.
Inspired Destiny. And then to book in a time for you, 20-minute free consult. Everyone should definitely be booking in. I'll put it in the Facebook Live here as well. And I'll put it in the show notes somewhere around the video. I'd like to go on a bit of a tangent here. You spoke about health. You spoke about being inspired. You spoke about your values. We spoke about potentially building a team and how do we focus our energy, not getting distracted. I'd like to go on a little bit of a shift here and talk about relationships, talk about intimate relationships, talk about relationships with self, talk about relationships with others.
Can I
And
quickly
so,
jump in? Can you tell everybody what you had on your wall after you and I did some work around relationships?
of course. So I think it was about 3 years ago,
Wow.
Emmanuel invited me to a webinar that he ran, and it was all about relationships, how to create your perfect relationship. And there was a document that he gave everyone on that webinar. It was amazing, this document, because it spoke about the different phases of a relationship, the honeymoon period, you know, and the other stages. It was like, I was just blown away by that. There's actually a predictable flow of what happens in a relationship and what love actually means, you know, not to be holding someone as what he mentioned before, all the positives of someone and not seeing the negatives, because that's not seeing both sides and that's not really true love. And so I was fascinated by this. So I printed it out. I put it in my garage where I lived and in the raw cave. And it was something that I'd always look at, pass by, show my friends.
Near the toilet, when he showed it to me, it was spread out. And you couldn't walk into that room without at least going past that once. And it just had the principles in there. I just had to bring it up because I never had another student that was that dedicated to growing and evolving in relationships. And it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing.
Well, thanks. I just liked how simple it was. So maybe we start there. What are the different phases of a intimate relationship? And how can people start to, I guess, have an awareness around this and to move them through these different phases to find a deeper level of love? Let's start with that.
I love that. Well, I'm going to start off by breaking a couple of myths and then we can get into that because I feel there's some fundamentals that if people understand that will make sense. The first one is that relationships are about love, but true love I'm going to define as the synthesis and synchronicity of complementary opposites. It's two sides. Because if you've never met somebody that hates one side of you in their perception and always tries to make the other side of you, the one they're addicted to, you always feel like, dude, love me for me and stop trying to create half of me. I'm not a half a person. But any of your friends that truly appreciate both sides, you feel that they truly love you. So you don't know anything until you love something. And that's knowing and appreciating both sides. And there's a way to do that and learn how to do that. But one of the first things is when you're getting into a relationship, everybody thinks that it's going to be about some positive, infatuative, and all that is chemicals and hormones, endorphins, etc., running through dopamine through your body. These are addictive substances, and they associate that to being the purpose of a relationship, but it's not. It's actually the infatuation. Now, that leads into the first stage of a relationship. The first stage is the infatuation. That's where the ancient Greeks used to say, we see more similarities than positives. If you see that, then you're infatuated. But the truth is you have similarities and you have complementary opposites as well. In fact, complementary opposites attach. In that first stage, you have no clue who the hell you're dating. You think you do, but you don't. And this is where you look at somebody and say, oh my God, you've got two eyes and a nose, so do I. We're meant to be together. You're looking for any similarities and putting them together. But at this stage, you've got the person on a pedestal. And you can never put somebody on a pedestal without putting yourself in the pit. It's a comparative game. They're either equal, you've got them on a pedestal, or in a pit, or you can have them in pedestals and pits and jump between the two of them. That's whenever you've had volatile emotions towards somebody. Quite often during a breakup, a person will have that. They'll go from that idiot, they treated me this way, to I just wish we were still together. And that's just them going from the extremes of both sides in their perceptions. But that first stage is the honeymoon stage, and most people try to hold on to that for a long period of time due to the addictive substances that they're experiencing, the chemicals in their body. The chemicals in your body are the most powerful drugs that you're ever going to experience. If you go out and you buy MDMA or cocaine or, I live next to Manly. I'm sure there was a lot of marijuana being smoked over there next to the beach as well. But if you go out and buy that, your body actually rejects a certain percentage of those chemicals. And the reason that it does that is because it's an alien substance. It also does the same with cooked meat as well, and a lot of other things. But it rejects a certain proportion of it and it only takes in, let's say, 30%, etc. Now, it's doing that because those chemicals are coming in, and as a foreign substance, it perceives itself under attack and wants to protect itself. Now, some of you may be thinking, I could be getting more high. Yes, don't ask me how. But whenever you have chemicals and hormones within your body, the body takes that and it runs with that, and it will take 100% of a hit. So if you're highly infatuated with somebody, the more you're infatuated with them during that first stage, the more that you'll actually find that you're blind to the downsides, exaggerating the upsides, and you'll start to feel, especially around the chest, all of the endorphins and everything running through you, and you won't feel like you. That is actually a feedback system to try and get you back into a state of homeostasis and balance, because you're screwing yourself over. That's why you'll find that the people that you've infatuated over with the most, you let get away with the most, you've been unauthentic and lived in their values instead of yours. And then later on, you end up resenting them to bring it back into a balance and get you back to finding a relationship that has balance. So that first stage of the relationship, I always say, get out of the honeymoon as soon as possible and get into the real part of the relationship. That's not real. Get into the real stuff. The minute you get into the real stuff, you'll be able to make a decision. You can make it in a year from now after they've really walked all over you, but you can make that decision a hell of a lot faster if you learn how to bring balance to those perceptions. I do that by utilizing the Dmrt Method, having a look at all the perceived positives of the person. Oh my God, they're so beautiful. Oh my God, they've got more beauty than me. They've got more power than me. They've got more social status than me. Probably more relevant today with the social media realm. But you have a look at all of those, then you take those areas, then you bring them into balance. And the minute that you do that, all of a sudden you're dating an equal. So when you transition from the honeymoon, then you go into the actual relationship. Now it's real. Now you're going to see pros and cons, benefits and drawbacks, similarities and differences. And now the real relationship's actually going to get its chance to work out. Now, you might be thinking, if I go from that state of an infatuation or one-sidedness, now I'm transitioning into that, what am I looking for? And what you're looking for is fulfillment. The word fulfillment means to feel full. That's when you transition beyond the lower levels of this spectrum of infatuative thinking and one-sidedness. And when you get to that, you get into the real relationship. Now it's the most interesting part where you'll realize that you're dating somebody that's a complementary opposite to you, where they have certain things that are high on their values in the mastery of 7 areas of life. And you've got things that are high on yours, and where you have strengths, you're challenging them to grow and evolve and become an equal. And where they have strengths, they're challenging you. And the purpose and the reason of attracting this person was actually to maximize human evolution. And that's the purpose of relationship, love and maximizing human evolution. And we're always attracting the complementary opposites. People don't want to hear this, and they get into an abusive relationship again and again and again. And one of the things that they'll realize straight away within that, you'll have to excuse me, I think the doorbell's trying to ring at the moment, but I can't answer that. But one of the things that they're doing within that spectrum straight away is they're minimizing themselves. They're minimizing their potential. They're minimizing their capabilities, and they attract somebody that's exaggerating themselves. And it's actually the universe bringing perfect dynamics in. And in a decade of doing that, I never have that occur without a person tuning around and then saying, I attracted that person, and as we do work together, crap, the person who I've become since that, how I've evolved and grown, has actually allowed me to become the person I am today. And that's where I find that women or men actually increase their physical strength, their mental strength, their energy, their vitality, and they evolve. So that next stage is where you're going to do the work now. And the word fulfillment means to feel full. And in order to feel full, we've got to have a balance of support and challenge. It's not one side about the other. It's actually the balance of both sides. And in order to do that, we've got to continue to work on the relationship. We've got to continue to grow and evolve. So that's the next spectrum. Is that doorbell continually ringing in the background for you guys?
I can't hear it. That's okay. That's all good. I think it was a vibrate, but that's okay. Can't notice it that much.
Yeah.
So this is a great new awareness in relationships to ask yourself, which I'm getting, is how fulfilling is this relationship to me? Not, how perfect it is or how much, how perfect this person is. It's how fulfilled do I feel? And so I'm curious to know if someone's not feeling fulfilled in a relationship, if someone may have these fantasies or perceptions of this person is amazing, this is incredible. I know I've had many fantasies for partners in the past that have definitely taken me off my center and stopped me from feeling fulfilled myself and also being myself. Yeah. And so how does someone balance out these perceptions? Or maybe someone has like this anger or disappointment or guilt or some heightened emotion, whether it's, we call it negative or positive. How does someone balance that out? Because I know just this, like a simple process like this that you've shown me actually can change my mindset in like within 15 minutes. And I'm feeling I'm feeling more me when I'm with that person. And I think that is the biggest gift we can give someone, is just to be ourselves,
No problems.
So how does someone, I guess, neutralize those perceptions, whether they're positive or negative, so they can be more of themselves in a relationship?
So the best way that I've seen to do that is the Dmrt Method. Now, you'll have to excuse me.
There we go.
I've got phone calls. Let me go and run and open that door, because right now it's going to get in the way of our recording. So pardon me for 2 seconds. I'm going to run over.
Not a problem. I must say, for those of you who are watching here, I've never seen such a well-dressed guest. Emmanuel Anthony always shows up with the background that he's got as well. It is absolutely stunning. And new insights are ringing in every couple of minutes. So
pardon me for that, guys. Usually I never leave a a cast here, but it seemed that my fiance has forgotten her keys or something. So what was the question again? Let's get back to it.
The question is, so, whether they're friendship relationships, whether they're team relationships, whether they're intimate relationships, whether it's relationship with self. And we might have, I know I've had in the past, infatuations of, a partner might be like in my eyes, perfect, amazing, there's so many similarities, or so maybe, there's a parent figure or a parent that I've had, and I'm like, oh, they just frustrate me. They're so annoying. They trigger me when this happens. They're so like their behavior is just so annoying. How does someone start to balance out these perceptions so that someone can be more themselves when showing up in a relationship?
Yeah, no problems. I just realized I didn't tell you guys. If you see me looking down, my computer's there, but the camera's up here, by the way. So that's what I'm doing. But in reference to a relationship, you're guaranteed to have that. And the key is to have the tools. So what Zach was saying before, and one of the reasons that I ran that webinar, and that webinar was specifically for my clients that do this work with me, my expectation of my clients is I'm going to show you how to balance your perceptions around anything that can occur in life and guarantee that you achieve a result in that. So if you're highly resentful towards a partner, I'm going to show you how to balance that and turn that into love and gratitude. And you're only resentful when you've seen the drawbacks without the benefits, the pain without the pleasure. But quite often the very thing that we're seeing a one-sided delusion is the thing that later on in life, when we actually take the time to have a look at, we realize there was another side to it. So I had an ex that I remember that cheated on me, and I was really angry and frustrated at her. But that was me drinking the poison and hoping that she died. Does that make sense? Because I kept carrying that around with my life. And then I didn't date for years because I was scared that women would do that to me. So it was just all this emotional baggage that I was carrying around. And it was like, at some stage I said, well, who's this really about? Because I can hate her all I want, but she's not around. She's probably living her best life. And here I am experiencing this internally, day in and day out, and sometimes it's conscious, other times it's not. So one of the reasons that I started doing this work is I wanted to know how to manage that. I wanted to know how to take care of that. I wanted to know how to be able to deal with that. Because if I didn't, I survive. I wasn't going to be able to be myself, and I wasn't going to be able to do the things that I wanted to intuitively do in life. And if you've ever been there before, you know that. And in fact, let me explain why that happens. Day to day, as things are occurring around us, we perceive things. We see and perceive them. We don't see them as what they are. We delete, distort, and generalize whatever's happening around us. So if you imagine something visually coming into my eyes, my central nervous system is now going to make an assessment. It's going to make an assessment based on perceived positives and negatives. So if Zach and I are in a room and something happens, and we label that, and I want to know what's going on inside both of us, I can give both of us a sheet of paper, and I'll say, can you write all the positives on one side, the negatives on the other? And what I get is known as a ratio of perceptions. What's the ratio of positive to negative? Now, there's 3 different ratios of perceptions. There's more negative than positive, or negative greater than positive greater than negative, or balanced. Anything that is positive greater than negative is an infatuation. You're exaggerating the positive in it. Anything that's negative greater than positive, you've got a resentment towards that, or you hate it. You'll have a word that aligns with negative emotions and perceptions. And anything that's balanced is actually what creates the greatest level of wellness and well-being and normalizes the body and mind, the central nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system. But let's say Zach comes back and he's got 3 positives to 1 negatives. And he's going to have linguistics and analysis of his language that's in reference to things that perceive more positive than negative. And what you think you feel. So he's going to experience those emotions and those chemicals and hormones in his body. Let's imagine, for example, I've got 10 negatives and 1 positive. I've got a completely different reaction to what it is that occurred in front of us. Neither one of us are right or wrong. They're merely our perceptions, but our perceptions are going to create emotions because they're like the last thing on the scale. It's a symptom. That's what an emotion is. So now that the mind is fought it, it's like a governing system. And if you will, we could also call that like the head office. It sent those signals, and now that just translates cellular level. And it's just information, because energy is information. But if we have a look, it goes through neurology, it goes through a range of other systems and organs, but let's go straight to the autonomic nervous system. Its job is to regulate chemicals and hormones. If it sees and receives something that is 10 negatives to 1 positives, it's such an extreme. And the autonomic nervous system is made out of a sympathetic and parasympathetic, fight and flight, and rest and relaxation. But if it's now saying amp up 10 times more, so if you think of an anxiety, which is adrenaline to the heart, for example, you're doing 10 shots of that and 1 shot of relaxation. The heart's not meant to do that. It's not meant to do that for a long period of time. And if you do, you have wear and tear, just the same as if Zach drove a car just down the road and back 20 minutes every single day and maintained it and looked after it with proper oil and maintenance and everything else. And I drove a car between Queensland and Melbourne, but never really looked after it. My car is going to look very different if we've got the same model. That's what people are doing internally inside of them when they have extreme emotions. The body fundamentally wants to look after itself. And its primitive thing that it's going to do is make sure that it's able to survive. There's only one way that it can survive. And the way it can do that is by making sure that it communicates to you what you need to do in order to bring it back into balance. So the things that are extreme positives and negatives, it actually occupies time and space in our mind and occupies time and space in our body, psychology and physiology. And they're feedbacks for us to bring those areas back into balance and equilibrium, because once we have a balanced perspective, a one-to-one ratio, we equilibrate the mind and the body energetically and physiologically. And by the way, all of these labels, they're all the same. They're just different expressions of energy. Somebody says physiologically, that's a different expression. It's the matter. Whereas if somebody says energy, quite often they're talking about frequency. But energy has different frequencies. And if we look at them through different mechanisms, we actually realize it's all the same thing with different expressions of itself. So in that correlation, when you're saying, why is it that I'm really pissed off at somebody or a partner sometimes? How can I resolve that? The key is to understand that whatever you're seeing in them, you have in you, owning it inside of you. They're your repressed parts. And when you learn how to love and appreciate that, then you can bring yourself back into balance. And the second key is to take all the things that you've exaggerated, the positive or the negative, and bring those back into balance and equilibrium. I like the Dmrt Method because it means that I can do that with a systematic process and teach people how to do that. And I've done that for a decade now. I even showed you how to do that as well. We've done some amazing relationship work. And then I can do some work with you, and then I can give you homework to do. And then you can go and come back and go, oh man, these 3 things that I've been holding on to for 3 weeks are completely gone. I'm going back into the moments where I was trying to run away and not think of, where she did X, Y, and Z. I'm so grateful now. I'm seeing how that helps me. It's on the way, not in the way. My body feels amazing because you're restored wellness and body back into its natural state. So that's how I get clients to work on that. But there's a profound, bigger impact that I found that occurs when you do that, which is absolutely magical. And you may have noticed this as well. Your mind is like a hard drive. And if you imagine a computer with viruses and all kinds of things going on, if you have a virus that's occupying 60% of your computer, when I had a PC, that used to happen regularly before I switched it over to Mac, it was just common for viruses. I found that the computer would slow down. But then if I fix that virus, I'd get the 60% back and it would go back to its maximum capacity, how it was naturally running. The body's the same as well. And the things that occupy the most time and space are the things that have the greatest level of disease and disorder. They're also, when unlocked, the areas that give you the maximum potential back. And they're the areas that you'll actually be able to increase your vitality and go back to who you authentically were. But here's another thing that's really interesting. In a decade of working with clients, I realized that it didn't matter what they came to me with. The moment we brought it into balance in any area of life and we worked through it, a person would naturally start doing what they value and increase their self-worth and do more of what they loved. And I went, this is really interesting. Is this a byproduct or what's, nobody's spoken to me about this. So, work with 50 clients, see it, work with 100 clients. Okay. Then by the time I worked with thousands of clients, I went, hold on a second. I've got enough case studies now. Our natural authentic state is a high level of self-worth. It's the going out and doing what we love. It's having a high level of energy and vitality. But it's not until we continually actually resolve those things, and especially the biggest challenges, that we can take that hard drive and restore it back to what it was. We can never get it back to 100% because every time you're working on something, there's more stuff coming in. And when you're in a relationship, you can have an argument today, work on it tomorrow, new thing happens next week. The key is to stay on top of it, just like cleaning a house or a car or anything else. Stay on top of it, manage your perceptions. And if you're doing that, you're not usually going to argue about the same stuff. There's new things that you're growing and evolving into. And the last thing I want to say in reference to that is embrace your friggin' arguments in relationships. When I wake up in the morning, I say that I'm going to embrace both support and challenge from Renee. And because we do this method over and over again, we realize that all of the challenges that we have, it's because we're evolving and we're dealing with the stuff from the past. It's all new stuff. And as the new stuff comes up, as we evolve and work through that, I go, oh, wow, that's really helped us in this area. It's helping us grow there. I'm discovering this new thing about Renee and I'm evolving my perception about her. That's what's keeping the relationship exciting. So you're always going to have that, but you can let go of the crux of most of it and then work on new stuff. And just like a business or anything else, doesn't matter what it is that you do, you're always going to have new challenges. And I think people, they love working on new challenges. We just get sick and tired of working on the old ones again and again if you have the same argument in relationships. But by doing that, you balance your perceptions, you clear what's on your mind, you let go of the past, and you transition into the future with your partner. And that gives you greater health, wellness, and well-being, and it gives a relationship greater potential to grow and evolve as well.
Wow, what a mouthful that is. This is so fascinating, as always. So what I'm curious to know, you mentioned a couple of things there. Self-worth. I'd love to maybe talk about self-worth in a minute. I'd love to talk about how you guys, I know you and your beautiful partner Renee have been together for quite some time now, and I see you guys growing and such a lovely couple together. And so when those triggers do come up, you know, whether they're arguments or disagreements or whatever, what's a way of actually approaching that so you can move through those times more smooth? Because I know even in relationships or business relationships or my team or leadership, you know, there are feelings of emotional triggers that happen, or, you know, I'm having to hold space for others, and, you know, it can be quite hard to always see from a balanced point of view on everything. And so, you know, what is the language, or how do you approach someone, or in a relationship, in a team, in a business setting, or in an intimate relationship, if you're feeling like there is something you need to get off your chest, get off your mind, and you're feeling that, is there a strategy to that?
Yeah, 100%. The first thing is, let's embrace the fact that you're a human being and you experience human emotions. And human emotions, as we just mentioned, you know, positive emotions, negative emotions, or balanced and synthesized loving emotions. So all three of those are part of the spectrum of life, and you're going to experience them all. I've been doing this for a decade. I still experience emotions. So we're not here to delete emotions permanently forever. They're feedbacks. And the extreme of those feedbacks create extreme disease. So I'm just in a different place, because I hear a lot of people going, I'm vulnerable and it's okay to be this and that. There's no argument whether experiencing emotions is normal. My thing is, at the most extreme point, and it always starts off with just a little bit of emotions, but at the most extreme, we create a lot of physiological disease and disorder. So for me, if you start to notice those symptoms, why not take care of them sooner rather than later? I remember it took me 3 years to get over an ex-girlfriend and all my perceptions around her. Then I did the Dmrt Method on it 3 years later when I learned it. And in 3 hours, the whole thing was done. But I'd lost a lot of friends. I'd added a lot of weight. I'd lost a lot of who I was myself, and a lot of things that happened along the way. And that was all part of the journey. But if I had a choice, I definitely would have done that earlier on and then lived my life. So the first thing I want to say is that you're never always going to be balanced. Neither Dr. John Deane, myself, or any other Deane facilitators are always balanced. But what we have done is change the way in which we have control over our emotions instead of our emotions controlling us. That was one of the major reasons I got into this work. Not only my father, but an ex-girlfriend that I broke up with. And then all of a sudden, after I broke up with her, it was approximately 3 years later. And I was like, I'm sick and tired of trying to resolve this in my head. Like you said, I'm being triggered by so many things, etc. And a trigger is nothing more than, we're these amazing vessels that record everything and anything that's going on around us. And the five senses is one of the ways we do that: see, touch, taste, tactile. But we actually have more than five senses. But if somebody physically hit you in a specific moment, your visuals might store everything that was going on, the space that you were in, the way that you felt internally and externally. If there was a certain material or you were holding onto a glass or something, it'll take all of that. What you heard as well, auditory, it takes on all of that. Then later on, if you see that as way more negative than positive and you haven't balanced that out yet, something may happen that triggers one or multiple senses. Sometimes one or a couple of senses are stronger than others. And all of a sudden you're back in the same perceptions. You know when that's not the case, because it happens naturally in some areas, but not in all areas, where something happens in the future and you go, oh, normally I would have reacted a different way to that, but I haven't. But why have the wisdom of the ages with the aging process in that reference? So that's the first element. You're going to experience human emotions. Human emotions come from imbalanced perceptions. So guess what? Learning how to balance your perceptions is the key to do that. And the minute you learn how to balance your perceptions, you'll end up in a space, and this is what I love doing with my clients. And hopefully, I believe it's happened with you, Zach, but you can confirm it. Before we do the work, if this is a balanced spectrum, you might find your more extremes, highs and lows, high infatuations, high resentments. And it's because the world before clients introduced to my work, it's around happily ever after. Relationships are meant to be perfect. You're finding somebody for happily ever after. Find the perfect job. One day you get to a space where it's all positive and no negative. It's a complete delusion, because I work with some really high-end CEOs and directors, etc. And if you'd say, oh my God, they make a lot of money, they live a certain lifestyle. They also have some of the most weirdest trials and tribulations of people coming after them for money as well. So they live in the extremes of both sides. It's not a one-sided delusion. But what happens is, they just have to balance your emotions. You train your mind unconsciously to have less of those extremes, because you realize it has two sides, and you're training yourself to do that. So now it starts to be more like this. Instead of this high bipolar style thing, it's more like that, where something happens and your mind's already bringing it into balance. And every now and then you may have to pull out pen and paper and actually balance something, but you'll find the 75% of it may not even need that, because you've trained your mind to do that. And that's a real key. Just like going to the gym, You went to the gym the first time and I showed you a bicep curl. 2 weeks later, you had to do it without never having done it again. You're going to find it really weird. But if you're doing that day in and day out again and again, the minute, and you know this as those of you that train regularly, pick up a bicep, not a bicep, a dumbbell, and you haven't trained for ages, your arm feels floppy. It's weird. You almost got to put it into its motion. But if you do it regularly, I used to be a bodybuilder, your shoulders go back, depending on how you do it, and it automatically goes into the right form. And now you're going into mind-muscle connection, deeper sense. The other one is just figuring out how to do it. But this is the mind-muscle connection, knowing how everything works and having it automatically do that. So you can do that and you can train yourself to do that. And yes, there are some people that naturally do that more than others, but through the work that we do, we actually train you how to be able to do that. Because I guarantee you, there is no happily ever after. There's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Like you said before, if we continue the relationship dynamics, after you go from, the real relationship, you could go to marriage. And if you go into marriage as engagement, then marriage, 2 different phases. And each one of those has their benefits and drawbacks, the expectations of the family, the expectations of the wedding, spending money on the ring, all of that whole thing is a trial and tribulation in and of itself. Then if you go, okay, well, that all works out. But now what are people expecting usually? Children, the different cultures and what they expect and their traditions and when they expect that. And then you buy a house in a lot of cases. There's a 25-year or so commitment financially and different challenges, and COVID, that would put a lot of stress on people in terms of those challenges. So then when you have children, finally get to happily ever after. No, you don't. You got sleepless nights. You're basically a drug addict. If you think of most people that you think that don't sleep, the reason that they're so off their heads, other than the drugs that they take, because the human body usually after a certain period, 24 hours, gets to regenerate. It has a process that it goes through for 6 phases of sleep, and it's kind of like a shutdown and restart, like a computer does, a reboot. They're not doing that. Well, parents are running around on minimal sleep and barely rebooting themselves and then having those jobs. So that can't be happily ever after, trying to figure that out. Plus, there's no training manual for children. So people have no clue what they're doing. They're just making it up as they go along. That's the truth about parenting. So then at the end of those phases, you go, okay, but what's next? And you go, well, you could be living together forever, or you could have a breakup or divorce. A breakup and divorce can happen at any time. Now, they come with their pain and pleasures as well. So in each of these, this is a reason why it's so important to manage your perceptions, because that's what you're getting into. But the infatuation, when you'll be so addicted to the upsides, you won't realize that that is also a part of the spectrum that comes with that. So when you learn how to manage your emotions, and then at a higher level, like Zach did, when you actually pre-predict what's going to happen and start to balance it beforehand, now that's one of the highest levels of mastery that you can get to. Because not only are you being realistic about the journey, and that's what Renee and I have done, by the way, to answer that question. We've looked at each and every one of those aspects of the journey. We look to bring balance to them. Every 4 months, we clear the cache of our relationship, and we do the Dmrt Method on each other. We look at all the things because you're constantly discovering somebody, even 6 years later for us. And we're balancing all the perceived negatives, letting go of that baggage, finding out how it serves us and helps us grow and evolve, taking all the new infatuations, balancing those out. We're on a clean slate every 4 months. We also communicate what the new values are, if they've changed as well. I show my values, she shows me hers, and we communicate in each other's values. This is a huge thing for relationships. When you communicate in somebody's values, they open up to you. When you communicate against somebody's values, they close down to you. And I already mentioned that you date somebody that is a complementary opposite to you. At the start, you'll think they're more similar, but as you get to know them, you realize there's pairs of opposites. I have to have the dishes done before I go to bed. They don't mind doing it the next morning, etc. You'll discover the truths. So then it comes down to communicating in their values. So if I want Renee to do something and it's something that I value, I've got to learn how to communicate in her values, because that's the art of selling, which is the art of serving. It's Greek Latin meaning, means to serve. And if I do that, it's a spontaneous and automatic yes. But if I don't do that, it's going to be a no, and she's going to feel that I'm projecting my values onto her. And that works in business or anywhere else as well. So same thing. If you've got challenges towards other people and you're feeling triggered, that's your stuff, not theirs. Bring it into balance and you'll change the dynamics between you and them, or the way in which you communicate to them. Yeah.
This is just another day in the office for you, isn't it, Emmanuel?
It's another conversation between you and I have to be honest. The day that Zach and I first met, he's already shared the story probably a million times if you watched this before as to how we met. Somebody thought that he wanted a coach instead of a cheerleading coach for an ad that he had. But we caught up at his place in Manly and went to have a conversation by the pool, which was meant to be like a half an hour catch up. But instead, honestly, felt like 7 or 8 hours may have passed. Well, it felt like 5 minutes, but we checked the timer. Like this It was ridiculous how much time we spent. And we had the same conversations. Now we just have them with a larger audience in front of us because we thought it was that cool that you guys could also learn from this. And it was things that we were all thinking or could evolve and grow in when we communicate or discuss together.
It was a fun afternoon, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The crazy turn of events where I was supposed to be getting a cheerleader coach for an advert. Little did I know he's a mindset coach. So that's where the beginning of that friendship began. I think that was like 7 years ago I interviewed you.
My first friend in Sydney, by the way. Zach was my first friend. I knew people in Sydney, but I never met a Sydney sider and made my own connection with friends. So Zach will always hold that place. Yeah, you'll always hold that place. The first friend I ever officially met.
Awesome. Awesome, bro. I'd love to know two things. I'd love to get into COVID and how what you're mentioning is shaping the world as we know it. But also would like to know in terms of the dynamics there, how to actually apply these. Hang on a minute. Someone sent me the message. Let me just read this. So how, with what you're talking about, the dynamics around relationships, whether they're intimate relationships, business relationships, family or friends, and how do we apply this knowledge to business, specifically to teams, to team dynamics, working with multiple people, helping multiple people from different ages, different places around the world. We're communicating within our team, within Healy to, hundreds of people, thousands of people a week, educating them, helping them with their goals, sharing the business opportunity with them as well. But more so, we've got a core group, intimate group of people. So we're really wanting to maximize our potential. So how can teams utilize this to maximize communication, potential, and results within businesses?
So the first thing we want to understand is within any dynamics, there's a complementary pair of opposites that exists within that. So you're going to have all spectrums make their way within the team. So that is guaranteed to occur. So every now and then people get into the workplace and they go, this is a professional space where people are going to be professional. No, it's a human behavioral space that people are expected to be professional. That's why if you work, the more people that you have, the more you go, that's the joker, that's the over serious person, that's the person that is not fulfilled by their job and wants to do that. That's the over fulfilled person. All the dynamics that exist. And if you think about it, it's the same as parenting. When somebody goes into parenting, this expectation you're going to be the perfect parent, you're going to know absolutely everything that's going on and how to do that. That's not how it works. When you get into there, wherever you are in life, in terms of mastery in all 7 areas, you're there, you just have a child now. It's the same within business as well. So understanding that, whenever I work with people around business, I say, first understand human behavior, understand how that works, because you're going to need to learn how to communicate and connect with people. And if one of the first things you want to do is find out what are all the values of the different people within the group, because you're going to have to communicate with each one of them differently in order to give them things that stimulate them to actually be inspired. So sometimes businesses think, we've got a business motto or something, and that's what everyone is. No, it isn't. That's what the business came up with. But every human being has a different set of values. So if I'm communicating with somebody where family's their highest values, when I'm communicating work things to them, I want to communicate them in the way where they see how it fulfills their family values and what their goals and objectives are. Then you're going to increase the probability of that person taking action. Whereas if somebody else is really into the career, but their part of it is to let's say, I know you work with Healy and a range of people, somebody's really inspired by health, I'm going to communicate that person based on health. If somebody else has had a lot of relationship challenges and that's what inspires them, I'm going to communicate to them in terms of relationship challenges. So I'm going to find out what are all the different values and care enough. There's 3 types of communication: caring, careful, careless. When you care enough to find out what somebody else's values are and communicating their values in a way where you get what you value, you have the greatest potential of longevity because you have an equal exchange between you and somebody else. When you're too careful, you're full of care, but too much, and you minimize yourself and exaggerate them, then you get to a point where you're overly trying to communicate in their values, but as a sacrifice to you, you build up resentment. That resentment is naturally part of the ecosystem to bring you back into balance. Then the last one that you have, so you've got careless, careless, where you actually care less about them and more about you. And now you narcissistically project your values onto them, and they'll build up resentment to bring you back into balance, because the greatest leader finds out the values of others and the greatest collective group of others. That's why they lead a collective group. It is a challenge to find out how to do that and then give the majority of people the thing that they value the most. And then those people will continue to follow that leader. So understanding human values, and so you can communicate to the staff, setting realistic expectations. You're going to have support and challenge, pros and cons, complementary opposite sets of values, and then learning how to actually overcome the challenges within the business as well. So if you go to, I worked with, well, I still do work with, for the Australian government, and I remember there was one department that I was working with, can't go into too much detail, but I was working with the execs of that, and they were going into a specific challenge that would involve a merger and breaking up a specific group of people that worked together that they had worked on for a decade or so, even longer. So when that happened, there was a lot of anger and frustrations and emotions. And I said, well, you can go in with that. That's one approach, but the chances are you're probably going to say things you don't mean, do things that you don't do, break up relationship ties that you may not need to utilize. You could probably leverage from these guys in the future. So we took all of the perceived negatives, saw the pros, took the pros that they were addicted to, saw the drawbacks of that until they went, oh, okay, we can still get our objective from this. It's just in a different way. We just have to learn how to leverage this differently. And the minute they did, they went in with reasoning, and you can only have reasoning when you see both sides. Otherwise, you have an emotional challenge. And we've all been in business with somebody that's highly emotional, one-sided, fundamental, not willing to see the other side, and eventually go, screw this, I don't want to speak to and communicate to this person. But anybody that's got a uniformal balance and can see both sides, and is open to both sides, they've got all the puzzle pieces. They'll win every single time.
It's all about creating that win-win-win relationship. Yeah. And the only way you know that is through, as you're talking about, knowing someone's values, what drives them, who they are. Yeah. And so this is just making me think that everyone that I communicate with, everyone that's important to me, in my team, in my relationships, in myself, is delving deeper into what's important to me, what are my values. So doing that Dmrt process with my team, my relationship with myself, I think is such a great foundation. And as you said, you're integrating that into your relationships. Every 3 months, you do a check-in. Hey, how's it going? What are we doing? What's working? What's not? And waking up every day excited for the supports from your partner or team, supports on success and celebration and recognition and growth and all that, but also being celebrating the awareness, or celebrating the challenge, celebrating the issues. So within our company, it's a startup, right? And so within that, this product is grown astronomically, right? They were supposed to have 400 units in Australia in 6 months. They had over 10,000. And so within that, there's been massive success, massive recognition, massive kind of growth and results. But at the same time, there's been, I'm thinking, equal level of challenge. Yeah. Is that a model? Is that a common thing within, say, startups or within businesses? Yeah. With massive success like this, there is going to be equal and opposite level of.
Well, you already know it. You already know it, because if you're only meant to sell, I believe, if my numbers are correct, 400 units, and then you went to, was it 10,000? Is that what you said? Yeah. So the role of what's necessary to move 4,000 is very different from 10,000. So now all of a sudden, if I was to ask you, what's your job stresses? What's your expectations? How many days have you worked overtime? What's your balance been like, etc.? What's your relationship? If I went through all of those, you go, dude, it's out the door. Sometimes I'm overworked and this and that, and you find that there's equally as much pain as pleasure. And one part of you goes, it's growing, the business is growing, we're serving a lot of people, I'm getting financially paid for that, so are many other people. But at the same time, wow, that's dramatic. That's over a couple of 100% growth. I first learned this, and one of the wisest things you can do, especially if you're starting off in a business such as yours, write all the pros of coming into the business, write all the drawbacks. The minute you do that, you have a reality. Now you'll take it from being an infatuation and put it into your heart. And now you can actually get real about what's involved. I did this in my business. I remember I was attending a program, it's a high-end program by Dr. Deane, and it's called Prophecy 1 program. Going to 7 areas of mastery, 7 areas of life, 1 area a day for 12 hours. And it's just from the start of time through to now. It's crazy stuff. And it's just learn. And there's basically no breaks. And I remember one of the first exercises was to write down the most inspiring goal in that area of life. And I was looking at vocation, which is career. And as I was looking at career, my goal was to work with clients back to back 12 hours a day. Now, most people look at that and go, dude, you're crazy. Even now looking back, I go, that's crazy. There's a lot more that's involved in a business. Now, I do have days where I'm back to back, but at the time I thought that was going to be the perfect existence. It was be the perfect idea of success. So when this exercise came to write down all the drawbacks, even though for 3 years I'd been applying this work, I went, oh my goodness, there are no drawbacks. I went, oh, I've got a high infatuation here. Time to get to work on it. And as I looked at the drawbacks, I realized less time with my family, less time with my niece, and I hadn't had my nephew yet, but I can tell you now that would have been less time with them, less time in my relationship. I find that the busier that work gets, I already work 2 days, so if it gets busier, then that means I'm working 14 hours a day, which means less time in the gym. I'm feeling more lethargic. And I went through the whole thing and I went, oh, wow. With that degree of success also comes a high level of mastery, and I'm not prepared for that yet. So if it happened tomorrow, I'd be all over the place. So the ability to see the benefits and the drawbacks, I became more present and appreciative for where I actually was at that time. I still wanted to achieve my goal, but I started to put things into place as to how I was going to prepare for that transition and get there. And that's why today, when you say, you look at this timetable, I go, yeah, but that timetable came from that exercise, because I predetermined a lot of those challenges that were going to occur. And then I started to come up with solutions for those challenges. And in doing that, I increased my level of fulfillment throughout the whole journey, as compared to getting to the point where it was super busy, where you are now. You've probably got less preparation. Now you're doing the opposite. You'll be doing that at the end of the spectrum. But getting to that point and then going, I'm dead. I don't want to do this anymore, which really just means I haven't got a balance in the 7 areas. And this, now that I got to this point, it was an infatuation, but I didn't prepare for myself. Anything that you exaggerate the positive in, it completely throws off your equilibrium, because nothing can exist in that paradigm. When you get there, you discover the other side, and now you've got to deal with the other side. I'd rather people deal with that earlier and create much more smoother transitions. So that's what I would say to the people that are really looking to grow in this company. Look at all the drawbacks, find strategies for them. If you create strategies for them and you start doing them from the start, you have much more of an opportunity to have this much more balanced escalation and growth within the company. But there are times, like you said, where not due to you or not planning, all of a sudden the product just goes gangbusters. And if that's the case, great. You've got a different set of benefits and drawbacks. Your benefits is a lot of financial potential, growing in the market and everything. Your drawback is you didn't have the time to plan in between, but make the most out of what you can so that you can bring yourself back to that state of equilibrium.
This is gold. And that is exactly what happened. The first 6 months of this year, I was literally, building, growing webinars, trainings, traveling, it's been beautiful. And so, the last kind of few months has been supporting the team, training everybody up. And so that pendulum is definitely shifting. And so that's just a powerful process that you mentioned is, getting clear on if someone is starting up like a business, or maybe starting the relationship and figuring out the pros and cons. And what I loved when you spoke about relationships a few years ago is that you're never going to find the perfect relationship. And you said, Zach, write out the perfect relationship. I was like, okay, all the qualities, all the things that I wanted in a perfect relationship. And you said, not sorry to burst your bubble, but that doesn't exist within one person. It exists within multiple people. And I was like, interesting. And I'd love you just to touch upon that a little bit, because I think that will definitely blow a little bit of a myth around finding the perfect relationship, or finding the perfect business partner, or finding the perfect business. I don't think that actually exists.
So Zach has been dating multiple women now to balance that out and make sure everything is fulfilled. I'm only joking. You've got a new partner in your life. Am I correct?
I have, yes. Very happy.
It's Facebook official.
Very fulfilled.
It's Facebook, or Instagram official, so now it's official. So quite often we set an unrealistic expectation of the ideal model of who we're attracted to and who we perceive would be the ideal partner. But the truth of the matter is, it doesn't come in one person. It actually comes in multiple forms. And in fact, the search image of what we have with the criteria of the partner that we really want is based on all the voids that you've created throughout your life. I have a really interesting one. I noticed that I was attracted to women with bigger busts. And at one stage, from a human behavioral standpoint, I said, why the hell is this happening? When did that occur? I remember a period in my life that wasn't an attractive factor to me, but later on it was. And delving within this field doesn't have to be a question that can't be answered. So I looked back throughout my life and I looked at all the rejections I had from a young child. And then I realized, when I was in primary school, I was rejected by certain women and I was told that I wasn't attractive enough. So I built a void for going out and learning how to dress well and look after my body and everything like that. But then as I dated another girl, I found that she kind of had a smaller bust, and then we weren't sexually connected. So all of the voids of that created this new search image, or it joined up with the search image. So now it's just like sketching out a David, if you want, the statue. All of these voids are creating different things that I find a lot of value in due to the perception of what's missing and the void. The bigger the void, the greater the value. So as I went through that, I was like, oh my God, it's not just that one physical human trait. It's actually a range of other things here. And all of these are creating a search image. So eventually when I found my fiance, Renee, I looked at the search image and I looked at her and I'm like, that's like 60% of the criteria. What the hell? No wonder I'm so attracted to her. Because if we compare her to a lot of other women I've met, they were 40 or 30 and maybe even close to 50, but she's 60. Okay, that makes sense. But then when you have a look and you write the list down, the person's not going to fulfill all of those because they're your unique set of values and voids. So there's an exercise called finding your soulmate. And what you do in the Dmrt realm, I've done this with a lot of people, especially women around like their 35s to 45 or 55, because quite often they can beat themselves up, compare themselves to the model of society, saying they should be married and have kids and all of that. And we do this exercise and we find out where is their ideal partner right now. What's the word for that again? I've lost it. What are they? Soulmate, that's it. And so where's your soulmate? So we have a look, we list everything down, we find out where that is in their life. Usually it's in the stage of multiple people. And I'll give you an example of this. I did this exercise first when I was about 24, and I wrote down, it was affection. Because I remember it had been 3 years, once again, since I've broken up with an ex-girlfriend, and I felt that was missing. And I wrote down affection. And then I got really clear on what does affection mean. And affection to me at that particular point in time was hugs and kisses via mobile or text, like because you can't see someone 24 hours a day, or in person. I said, okay, who actually is demonstrating and displaying that? My first perceptions were around women. I went, oh, my housemate, Victoria. She's very affectionate. She's like a sister. Then I went, my best friend at the time, Cece, and our best friend, Ange. And I went through and there was about 5 or 6 women. And then I started laughing. Because then I realized that when I was growing up, we didn't have the word bromance, but today it's commonly acceptable to send your guy mates, hey buddy, haven't seen you in a while, let's play a round of golf, kiss, hug. So I realized that my guy mates were sending me just as many affectionate messages. And that feeling of warm and fuzziness that I'd get was just the same as when I got it from them because of our connection. I went, oh, Jesus, my friend Bronson, at least once a week sends me a message. Dude, I'm caught up with you, man. Are we going to catch up? I miss you, dude. Let's have a steak and let's talk women. You know, he didn't use that word. He used the word starts with B, but let's talk. So I go, okay, that's him. And then I kind of went through and I ended up with like 30 people in my life that were demonstrating and displaying that. Then a part of me said, yeah, but it'd be better if it was in the form of one, like I had with my ex. So I went, okay, I've got the ex on a pedestal. I've got these people down here. So I'm kind of minimizing their worth. I'm exaggerating hers. Or the ideal partner was similar to her. So I looked at all the drawbacks of the ideal partner. One person, with them, I get a multitude of people. When it's one person, if I ring them, I need advice and they're busy, I might not get through for a whole day. With a multitude of people, I get a variation of advice. So that affection is constantly there. That affection happens more with them than what it did with that one person. The quantity and the quality is actually similar in when I looked at it. And as I started to do that, I got them both to a space of being centered. I ended up in tears of gratitude. And I realized, what am I comparing these two for? They both have pros and cons. My life is perfect the way it is right now. And if it was to change it to the form of one, it's just going to go from one to many throughout my life. And each one of those is absolutely beautiful and exactly what I need at those particular points. And the minute you see that, and you do that with every single trait, whether you're dating somebody or not, all of a sudden you take the pressure off that person to be all of those things. Because the minute you put the pressure on, you try and change them. When you change them, they feel that pressure and they want to be loved and appreciated for who they are. So they'll build up resentment to kick your ass into seeing the truth of what's there. So with Renee, I don't have the expectation for her to be all of those things that I appreciate, or all of those human traits that I feel that I love hanging out with. I have other people that I delegate those to, and so does she. In fact, a great example of that was I was in Queensland. I was attending a Dmrt breakthrough experience. I was facilitating there. And while I was facilitating, my fiance rang me and she said, oh, by the way, I've been in contact with this. There was a guy from China that she does business with. They've been doing business for 20 years or something like that. And he said, he's here, he's not with his family, but he just let me know that he's here. And if I want to catch up and grab a bite to eat, and I just want to see how you were doing and let you know, he wanted you to be there as well. I know you didn't want to come. And my friend's like, why wouldn't you want to go? Like, aren't you protective of her having a date with another guy? I said, no, they just want to talk about fashion. She talks to me about that for too long. I switch off and start looking around and I get bored, procrastinate and hesitate. So instead, I delegated off to guys like him where she can actually communicate with him. And all they'll do, he's married, they'll just spend a whole night talking about the industry and fashion and all the ins and outs and all the stuff that's highest in their values. And then she'll just go home and then call me and annoy me with more stuff and how their night was. So now I don't have to hear about that. I can be here doing what I value. And he goes, oh, you have a lot of trust for her. I said, whether she decides to be with somebody else than me, that's a choice based on the fulfillment level of our relationship. And if I'm fulfilling all 7 areas within my own life, and I'm fulfilling all 7 within the relationship to the greatest degree I can, then it makes it hard for another guy to come in because I've got to compete against that. That's the competition. So I'm not worried about that. And if she was to, that has benefits and drawbacks. And I'm willing to embrace both because I've been single and I've been in a relationship. They've both been beautiful. It's not about the fantasy of where you want to be. It's about loving and appreciating where you are. And those that are most present with where they are right now, the most fulfilled. Those that always compare their life to where they think they should be are the most depressed. That's what depression is. It's a comparison. So the minute I was able to see that, he went, oh, so you delegate things that for her are highly fulfilling and traits or actions that she feels that she really needs in her life to other people. I go, yeah, sometimes they're male, sometimes they're female. I don't really care. You know, what genitalia they have doesn't make any difference to me. It's her level of fulfillment. And when she comes back, I've had something off my plate and she's more inspired and her and I are much more connected. But if she was to project that expectation onto me, that'd be too much and I wouldn't do it and be unauthentic and I have no interest in that. I'd rather her be authentic, I be authentic, because there's 3 pillars to relationships here. There's you, the 2 of you as individuals. And when that is vibrating, like when the 2 of you are mastering all 7 areas to the greatest degree, the foundation is amazing. So now you can work on your mutual goals together. And you have 2 people that are as close to being, doesn't mean you have to have the same values, but as close to being as strong in each of those areas that can contribute to that. You don't feel like you have to carry somebody as much because there's such a lower spectrum of evolution within a certain area. So working on yourselves is the first thing. So I recommend, if couples are always together, I go, get over it. Go spend some of your own time, discover who you are as an individual, and then that'll make you actually want to spend time with the person. And when you have a balance of those 2, you actually feel the relationship can prosper and grow instead of being strengthened. But that's the second level. And then the third level is when you introduce kids or family or anybody else into that. But if you've got that first one done, then you get that second one done, you're strong enough to handle anything that comes with the third area.
This makes so much sense. You know, common sense isn't that common these days, but this is fundamental, and I really, really am grateful for you sharing this. I know.
I quickly say as well, common sense is an overrated. I almost swore that. I don't know if this audience can swear, but it's absolutely overrated. Common sense means common, which means the majority rule, and there's the masters and there's the masses. And there was a stage where the masses perceived that the earth was flat, and if you said anything against that, you were completely changing a paradigm. I work in a paradigm today where you can completely dissolve emotions, and it goes against the whole of the psychological realm where clients are coming in and they're doing it week in and week out, and they've done it for a decade. I've got a business model around that. So sometimes people say common sense. I'm not interested in what the common people think. I'm interested in evolving beyond the masters into an area of mastery in the area that I value the most. So if you're selling products or doing things and you're breaking paradigms, you better be ready to, if you're willing to take the reward of breaking the paradigm and shifting a paradigm in society, or what do they call it when you hit a critical mass, then you have to be, the risk and the reward come equally. You have to be willing to take the reprimand as well on the way to that. But I guarantee you they're worth taking in an area that you're most inspired by. Anyway, go on, as you were saying.
Well, we must say then master sense. You know, this is the master sense. We've got senses of masters popping in and learning from ourselves, learning from each other. And I think that's such a great experience for all of us. And I just want to say I'm super grateful for you sharing this. I know that in the Facebook chat, there's hundreds of comments already. So this is amazing. So
guys, let's ask quality questions. A question is a quest for information or a quest for an ion. An ion is an imbalanced particle. So if you have quality questions, you're looking to bring balance to your life, because then you end up with rational thinking, which is when you see both sides of the ratio, which allows you to make thinking and decisions very quickly. So only when you see one side about the other that you have regret. So if you've got quality questions, I'm looking forward to answering them.
Mm-hmm. And that's really interesting. And the quest for an ion to balance, the universe, as you said, is always looking to balance in the beauty of how it's been designed.
Well, let's repurpose that. It's already balanced, but our imbalanced perceptions create ionization through the body. That's why you have tense ions, tension, and compressed ions, compression, within the body. And the minute you bring it into balance, that's why clients will say to me, oh, my shoulders feel lighter. I feel enlightened. I go, yeah, because the word enlightenment means to move towards the light, and light in physics is a perfect balance of positive to negative. So enlightenment is moving towards that perfect spectrum of a 1-to-1 ratio. And that's why you're also rewarded with energy and vitality, because the central nervous system, autonomic nervous system, the whole body works in alignment, and that's its natural state. And we're just bringing it back to its natural state, because as human beings, we have a lot of programming and misperceptions based on culture, society, friends, Hollywood movies. There's a range of different reasons as to why we have imbalanced perceptions and fantasies and delusions over the way that life should be as compared to the way that life is. And science already communicates that. True science, not pseudoscience. If you're familiar with pharmaceutical companies and fake studies and things like that, there's a lot of pseudoscience which is telling you the way things are because they've written it up based on fake tests, etc. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real science. And sometimes it's a misconception. And usually when I work with people, I aim to break those and get them as clear as possible, and then have applicable processes and things they do to create a result, and then go, I physiologically feel the difference. That's true.
And there is a truth in that. And, and results that I've had with you, or the results you have with clients, speaks volumes. And that makes so much sense. The a tense ion in the body
Holding on to that.
Holding on to that. Or,
and anything that you hold on to and you don't let go of is guaranteed to stay with you through emotional baggage until you're ready for the truth of love, which is both sides.
And this is, my next question, which we won't answer because I'm going to answer it for everyone. It's like, well, how does someone figure out these perceptions or these imbalanced perceptions? Because if the sunglasses we're wearing, so to speak, are foggy and broken, our whole reality is going to be foggy and misplaced and we're not going to be able to understand it. And so this is where getting in touch with yourself, I think, is such a great investment for anyone out there. Please jump onto the Calendly link in the Facebook Live chat or around the show notes of this podcast. I'd like to just have two more.
By the way, you're also able to just add me on Facebook, but just send me a message if you do and say, hey, I want to have a 20-minute discovery call with you. Because sometimes people never know what they want. So just be clear and say, I'm fine with that. Let me quickly say on top of that.
Yep.
Human beings studying physics are atoms studying atoms, really. It's a really interesting thing. But as a human being, you're here to do something magnificent. And if you don't do that, you will get every single disease and symptom within your body to do that. Just try living unauthentically for a day. You'll think you've got spontaneous feedback in terms of a headache or something like that. It's not the case. These are feedbacks from the universe, which works through you, because if you study waves of energy, you'll find that at a certain frequency, there is no separation. You, myself, I'm looking at a DSLR camera and communicating. It's all one. So we're all one, but at a different spectrum, we see separation, but it's one, and it's a weird thing to get your mind around. But as part of this dynamics in nature, everything has meaning and purpose, and nothing is there for the sake. There's no fat, if you were to say it, as they say. And when you look at any ecosystem, you'll find that you're just marveled by the way nature's put that together. You have predator, prey, predator, prey, predator, prey. The whole thing's beautiful. So you, in this ecosystem, are here for reason, meaning, and purpose. And the minute you awaken that and you live in congruency with that, you're giving the rewards of the feedback systems to allow you to do that: energy, vitality, prosperity, growth in all 7 areas of life, and mastery. So that's what you're here to do. And every feedback in your body is trying to get you there. So although, yes, you can get in contact with me and we can work on that, you've already been working on that your whole life. You've already been getting those feedbacks your whole life. Maybe you just haven't understood what those feedbacks are. And that's, when I work with clients, that's one of the most beautiful things that I show to them. The fact that the universe wants you to win. It wants you to win so bad. It's willing to give you feedback every second. It's just a matter of understanding that feedback and then knowing how to work with it. And those that know how to work with it, they move fast. And those that don't, they move slow. And in fact, energy is the same as well. High frequencies are fast vibrating, and lower, denser frequencies are slower. So you can be a dense frequency, or you can be a highly vibrating frequency. I prefer to work with highly vibrating frequencies. Well, I start off with densers and I move them into a higher vibrating frequency.
And that's exactly why we're here. That's why we're here, is to raise the consciousness of the planet, right? And so we're doing that one conversation at a time, sharing this incredible knowledge with everyone here with this podcast. I have 2 last questions and we'll wrap it up. I know we've been flowing for so long now and it's been super inspiring.
I thought we were going to solve all the problems in the universe.
All the problems in the universe. Let's solve
today. Let's go.
I'd love to know, just doesn't need to be a long kind of, well, we'll see how it flows, but COVID has exploded throughout the world. This perception of COVID has exploded around the world, and there has been many ups and downs for lots of people. It's affected all industries, a lot of people's lives. And at the same time, it's also created lots of beauty and success and brought people together. I feel like there has been the equal pros and equal cons to this experience. But I feel some people are still stuck in the frustration of what's actually going on, and it might be consuming them. So and you mentioned this last time, but how can someone start to balance out these perceptions if they feel that COVID is really dimming down their light at the moment?
Yeah. So let me start off by saying let's do a linguistic game here. COVID isn't doing anything. COVID is known as a specific virus, whether you are a conspiracy theorist and don't believe that it exists, or you do. I probably sit somewhere in the middle, where I believe that there is a real virus out there, but the spectrum of which some facts have been skewed for me not to be able to make up a comprehensive decision by certain scientists as to where I sit on the fence. So I like to think that I'll wait till the evidence comes in and I'll assess that. But COVID isn't doing anything to anybody. That you were talking about a disease stays where it is. It's like saying that a person ruined your life. No, your perception of that person is what's creating destruction throughout your body. So the first thing we want to know is that you're in control because you are the one that guides your perceptions. So when COVID first occurred, I took a group of people together and called these people my case studies as clients and students. And I said, guys, I want you to write 50 ways in each of the 7 areas of life: physical, financial, mental, spiritual, social, vocation, and family, in which this COVID period is going to help you grow and evolve and prosper in all 7. And for the ones that did it, came back the following week with smiles on their faces and said, let's go. Ooh, I'm ready to go. I can't wait. And the ones that only did a little bit of that exercise came back and went, oh, okay, I can see that may help a little bit. And the ones that didn't do the homework said, oh, I was really busy with blah, blah, blah. I don't even take that excuse anymore. I say 24 hours in the day, those that are doing great work manage their time based on their values very differently. And I then watched them over 6 months, and I saw that the people that had taken the time to completely alter their perceptions and see how that could help them, they were completely different. And they evolved and grew, made more money, and had greater connections. Their perspective in their day-to-day life was amazing. I did it myself as well, because I'm not just teaching this. I wanted to find a strategy to live my life. But then from there, I then went and I did some podcasts. And one of them, when I said, a lady asked me and said, what are your thoughts in this COVID period? I said, for the students of mine in my level 3 program, which is Life Mastery, that have taken the time to plan the next 50 years of their life, in the financial realm, I recommended that they create an account for when the stock market would crash. I didn't say if, I said when. And one of my students said to me 4 years ago, all right, so how would you like me to set up the zombie apocalypse account? And I said, well, your zombie apocalypse account isn't going to be funny when the market crashes. Anyway, he ended up saving $70,000 in that bank account. And when COVID happened, he rang me and he said, this is the best financial opportunity that I've ever had in years. And my zombie apocalypse account, I'm losing that word, he goes, I really wondered why the hell you were getting me to set that up. Now in the time of perceived down, I'm looking to go up, and I'll probably make more money than I'm in my job in the next few years. So for those that take the time right now to manage their perceptions, manage their emotions, they change their actions. And the minute that you do that, you can start to pre-prepare, because dealing with spot fires just every single day gets tiring. It takes a lot to do that. But if you can learn how to actually pre-predict and transition forward, you can actually prepare yourself to be COVID proof or anything proof, because they diversified their funds into multiple areas. So if you found that you had a lot of challenges during COVID, I want to be open and honest with you. All it revealed is the weaknesses in the areas that you're not mastering, that you require mastery in now. So if you feel you're behind the 8 ball, the best day to get in front of it is today. The best time was a couple of years ago, but since you may not have done that, the best time is today. So use this to your advantage. You may be thinking, I don't really have the time to do that. Well, you've got the same amount of time now as you did back then. Probably have more of a value for that. So let's roll with that. So the key during this COVID period is just do that exercise, write that down, and commit to completing that exercise. Don't give yourself the excuse of, but I don't know what it is. I only came up with 5 in physical. When I give this to some of my students, I give them 100 in each area. When I do it, I do up to 300. Because wherever you stop is where your mind and your level of evolution is maxing out in your current level of evolution. and you have to push in order to transition and get through that. It helps if you've got a specialist like me, because I show you some specialized techniques to be able to do that and to speed up the time. Why wait a year when you could do it in a couple of hours and learn that instead of trying to go through a range of different things? But that's really the key. And whether it's this or anything else, it's all the same stuff. Next week, the media will have, the minute COVID's over, the media within a month, I guarantee, will have some kind of other trial and tribulation. It's just that we're facing a global one. But that's the first thing that I did. I wanted to know, how is this going to serve me, or how am I going to take actions to go and serve myself and others? And there's no lack of money in the industry, because there's always, the minute you find out the greatest voids of society and you create the greatest value there, there's always money for you. So if you go out, find the greatest voids, help and serve people, and provide the greatest value, and have competitors in that, and continue to grow and evolve, then you're going to find that there's always a place for you.
What a breath of fresh air that was. So true. So true. So appreciate every single word you've said. I'd love to know, one last question is, what does wealth through health mean to you?
Yeah. So for me, health is one area of wealth, and wealth links in with wellness. But for me, I've heard, when I was growing up, I said, I want to be rich. I want to be rich. I still love the idea of having a lot of money, but that's one of the 7 areas. You don't get fulfillment in just one area. You want it in all areas. And that's what I found. The more areas I fulfill, the more I have energy and vitality, and the less that I'm going to, because if I just made a lot of money, but I didn't serve a lot of people, then I'm not going to make that much money anyway, because you make large amounts of money by serving large amounts of people. If I don't look after my physical wellness, I'm not going to be around long enough to do what I love for large amounts of time either. So for me, true wellness through health, if you want to look at it that way, is to master all 7 areas of life and give yourself the greatest opportunity. And health is one of those areas, but it just happens to be a massive area. Because if you work on that area, that's like working on the car. Most people treat their bodies like renter bombs. Like, what do you expect out of this thing? I have a close friend of mine. He's a chiropractor, and a big guy came in, and he just had a heart attack. And he was 60, I think, or around 60, 65. And he said, I can't believe I had a heart attack. And he said, what's your lifestyle like? What do you eat? Just ask him a certain set of questions. He goes, I can't believe you've lived this long without having one. And what he meant was, the guy strategically had almost done everything that he could to guarantee he should have had a heart attack way earlier than what he did. So I feel that's the same way. This human body is a vessel, and if you study it, and if you study what we actually have inside of our body, it's like another universe. It's crazy. Just like the amount of parts that come together to make this work, it's literally another universe inside of us. And the amount of living organisms inside of us would profoundly be even bigger than the universe if you were to see that. It's crazy. It's like stuff living inside of stuff, living inside of stuff, and there's just all of these ecosystems going from inside of us to outwards. It's crazy. So that is an ecosystem, and that ecosystem thrives, we already know it, and does well within a certain environment, watching the water that you put inside you, watching the food that you put inside you, managing the thoughts. I actually did a video as well, the 3 pillars, I think it was, to self-mastery. But it was basically talking about a similar thing as well, because what you think determines the ecosystem internally, because you can eat as well as you want, but if you're having imbalanced perceptions, all these guys are working with each other, then you're destroying it from the inside out anyway. So it's like all the food is doing is giving it the best chance to try and make up for the crap that you're constantly destroying it with. So each one of these pillars, as you work with them, and that's the wellness factor, as you look to have mastery in all 7 and do as great as you can in each one of them, and just grow a little bit every single day. But over time, that little bit means a lot. Just like my vision, sitting on the bed as a guy that just took drugs and partied and didn't know much and didn't read books or anything, but just committed to a little bit a day. Now I'm seen as an expert in this area. I think I've got a area of expertise, but if I compare it to some of the guys that I'm moving up to with my competitors, like Dr. Dmrt, that I want to, he's not necessarily a competitor, but I look at him as a competitor because it gives me an opportunity to see a different lens where I go, what's everything that you know that I want to have? And therefore I can see the next levels of mastery. I've still got so much to go, but there's no reason why anybody watching this can't tomorrow be at a higher level than what they were today, and the next day be that, and in a year from now be serving others and sharing that level of mastery with them. So that's what it means to me. Mastery of all 7, health is one of those areas, but it's such a crucial area, because if you get that right, you're going to increase the probability of longevity to be able to master those other areas and have fulfillment and grow and evolve and look younger as well. Those that have are doing what they love, managing their emotions, they have less internal disease from overrunning organs and speeding up the heart and everything else, which means that you actually decrease the aging process, and those that don't increase the aging process.
Speechless. Thank you so much for sharing everything you've shared with us. Thank you so much for your time, your insights. It's an absolute honor to have you on here. And I know that so many of everyone that listened got so much value out of this today. So if you are watching this, please share this around. And we look forward to having you on the show at another point, Emmanuel, in the near future. And we can talk about some other exciting, relevant topics. But yeah, really appreciate you jumping on today. It's been inspiring. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share. And for everybody watching this, if there's one thing I could say, other than connect with myself, connect with Zach, continue these conversations, take action. That's the real difference. Zach said something, I'll leave you with this. When I gave him the tools and resources for relationships, he put it near the toilet door. He must go to the toilet a lot, but he put it near the toilet door because he knew that that was an entrance that he had to go through regularly. And as he filled his mind with more inspiration and took actions towards it, his life became more inspirational. Just like my mentor says, it's impossible to stick your hand in the pot of glue without having some of the glue stick, or honey, I believe they say. So it's exactly the same. And the act of taking knowledge, people say knowledge is power. It isn't a friggin' thing, because we all know people, or we know ourselves, things that we could apply that we have knowledge on, that if we did it, we'd actually be able to be very powerful in certain areas. The application of knowledge is powerful. So watch this over and over again. Share this with people that you appreciate. Talk about it with them. So that way, the highest level of mastery is actually teaching something. So if you watch it over and over again while you're walking, exercising, all of those things, and then you repeat it to other people and share some of the knowledge that you learned here, just the simple facts like dis-ease, the body not being at ease, etc. Wow them with some of the amazing things that you've learned. As you do that, you're neurologically programming that in and then taking actions accordingly. If you just keep that cycle going, share this with people, take what you learn, communicate it to people, apply it within your own life, it's impossible for you in the next year not to create some profound changes. So do that. And for those of you that, I feel like my messenger has been going off. So I think some people may have already contacted me, but if you have, I look forward to communicating with you and finding out where you are in life and how I may be of service as well. And for Zach, thank you as always. I love these conversations. We never know where we're going to go. I probably pretty much know every time that we end up over time, but put you and I in the space discussing anything to do with human evolution, advancement, health, wellness, and well-being. You're two inspired beings that are just energetically ready to just go deeper and deeper. So thank you. Love you, brother.
Oh, brother, likewise. This has been beautiful. Thanks for your time. Have an amazing day. Talk to you later, everyone. Thanks for jumping on.